Thanks, Tim. And with that, let's go ahead and get started with this month's community call. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the April PowerShell community call, April 2022 PowerShell community call. And we have an action-packed agenda, and so we're going to dive in here shortly. But first of all, a couple of things. There is a link that I posted in the chat, which will take you to the GitHub issue where you can add questions. You can also add questions here into chat as we go through this community call. And it also lists our agenda for you. Sydney has already brought our agenda up on screen. I'd also like to remind everybody about our code of conduct, both here in the community call and in our GitHub repos. Essentially, what the code of conduct is, be nice. And that would be a great start to everybody's day. One other business note I just want to kind of give before we start diving into the agenda is like to welcome everyone that is coming to the Powershell Summit 2022 next week here in Bellevue in Washington. It's one of the first things that in the last couple of years that we as PMs and engineers that we're able to go to, and we really look forward to seeing everyone and having some great conversations. So if you're going to be there next week, really looking forward to it. And with that, let's go ahead and get started with this month's agenda. And the first on the list is about a release candidate, VS Code extension. Sydney, what's going on with VS Code?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a regular on this call, you've heard us talk about the updates to our VS Code preview extension over the last 6 months. I know we keep saying we're close, we're almost there, and we finally got to a point where we were ready for a release candidate. And we actually had our second release candidate go out just yesterday afternoon. I'm going to pass things over to Andy in just a second, who's going to speak a little bit more about some of the changes that got made. But I just wanted to first, take a moment to, let you guys know that it is really close to GAing, and just give huge props to Andy and Patrick for all of the work that has gone into these major improvements to the extension, as well as, a little shout out to Rob, who kind of started this project. Tyler also has continued to really support this project and even just made a PR that got into our last release. And also Justin for being a great community maintainer. But with that, I will pass things over to Andy, who's going to talk a little bit more about one of the very exciting fixes that just got made that resolved a whole bunch of long-standing bugs in the extension.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for that intro, Sydney. So I'm going to try to keep this to about hopefully less than 5 minutes. I went into a lot more technical detail in a call with our team yesterday, but just sort of a high-level overview. If you remember in the last couple of months, we've definitely been like, oh, we're so close. We're about to push this out to GA. And we had to put a hold on it about a month ago when we realized a whole lot of new issues were being opened around kind of like using the prompt both on Windows and Linux, but they were manifesting in different ways. And then I started digging into it, and these issues were old. They were old issues that were being reopened that had either regressed or just were ancient issues that we'd never had really figured out. We thought that they'd be addressed by the pipeline rework, and they really weren't. And so I kind of tugged a thread, and I'm just going to go ahead and share a pull request here, just like a link for people who are interested in what we actually ended up doing. Let me get this link into the chat for those of you in PowerShell editor services. So in this last month, we focused on actually fixing the underlying cause of a whole lot of these issues. And maybe, in fact, I can share my screen and just show you this list of a few, not even all of them, but a few of the issues that we had run into. We have stuff like, well, if you used like host.getChoice from the user, it would need an additional key press, and that was really odd. And that was kind of only happening over on Windows and not on Linux, and it was like, what's different there? But then we also had like, on Linux, we had the typewriter effect of pasting into the integrated console would literally sit there and take minutes to paste what you had in your clipboard, because it looked like it was typing it out character by character. And it was, because underneath over on Linux, it was polling for characters. We had ancient issues around like running tools such as exif tool under the debugger that we kind of at the time didn't even have a clue how to fix. We knew it was an issue and we hadn't figured out that root cause. It turns out that all of these were really tied together in like an underlying API. When you're running PS readline wherever you're running it in regular PowerShell or in PowerShell integrated console, we loop around console.readKey, get key from user, do something with it, like tab completion or something. And it's not cancelable. And in the architecture of like using both a client, the extension, and a server underneath it, PowerShell Editor Services, and having this interactive integrated console, but also having non-interactive commands being sent to it, like when you press a button in the extension and it tells the server, hey, go do something. We had this thread waiting on console.readKey that just couldn't get canceled, even though we needed to cancel the task. This is actually the underlying cause that caused all of these problems. On Windows, we had sort of worked around this thing being uncancelable by buffering a key and sort of pretending that we exited and we held a key. That caused a myriad of different issues. And on Linux, we didn't even call it. We instead pulled for key available. And if a key was there, then we quickly grab it. But that really didn't work either. That caused that typewriter effect and other problems. And these showed back up in the latest previews because in the pipeline rewrite, Rob and I took out a lot of code I'm sorry to say it, but we didn't understand. We're like, that shouldn't be necessary. Why is it there? And as I dug into this bug, I realized, oh, those were workarounds. They were all individual workarounds for pieces of this puzzle where we were trying to, like, we'd rewritten our get credential commandlet. Instead of using PowerShells, we'd rewritten like the host prompts so that we could like control what input they were getting instead of, again, using the built-in ones. I was finally able to address this underneath at the core. No, console.readKey is still not cancelable, but we found a much simpler solution where when we go to cancel it, we ask the client to pretend to send a key press, and you never see that PS read line goes, hey, I've been canceled, and consumes the key press for us. Read key exits, it returns as if it were canceled, and we know that we canceled the rest of the task. And all these issues have gone away. And if you look at the PR, we ripped out about 1,000 lines of code in just this one PR alone in the last release. We really just rely on console.readKey now. Everything seems to work a lot better. It works the same now on Linux and on Windows. We're just calling console.readKey. There's no more of these myriads of issues where just stuff's just not working right because of workaround and on top of workaround. Things work the way they should now. So that's the long and short of it. And I think I kept that to 4 minutes of a high-level overview of console.readKey. This is in the latest preview in that release candidate. I also want to give a quick shout out to some amazing work by Patrick for getting the attached to run space or like remote process debugging working again. That's also in the latest preview. That was the other thing that we've sort of paused for. It's a lot more technical. It was just sort of, we regressed from stable, and so we knew we needed to fix that before moving it out. But with those two pieces finally solved, yeah, we're actually, we want to get this RC into stable like next week. And there are still things broken. I don't want to say the extension is perfect. We know it's not, but the preview is a lot better than the stable right now. So we're rolling it forward. Thanks so much. And thank you all for testing and for your patience.
Wow, Andy, I'm really impressed because yesterday when you explained that, yeah, that was a pretty tough explanation, but what a complicated problem and really cool. So you said that it's available now in the preview and that you're working towards stable in the next couple of weeks?
Yes.
Oh, that's outstanding. That's outstanding. Really looking forward to using that preview. So next up on the agenda is Danny Martins talking about, I didn't even check to see if Danny was here. I hope he's here.
I am
talking
here.
About SS. Oh, yay. Talking about SSHR. Danny, take it away.
Yeah, hey folks. I know we've kind of been quiet a little bit on the SSH projects that we've been working on for the past few months, and that's just because we are doing things outside of the Win32 OpenSSH repo. As some of you might know, we do a lot of projects that aren't just Win32 OpenSSH. We do things just SSH related in general, and part of that was a collaboration with the Arc-enabled servers team, providing SSH access to those machines, but without a public IP address and without opening any additional ports. So this was announced as a public preview earlier this week. So just a quick demo. And I'll keep giving you some more information as I talk, so woohoo. I'm gonna assume that this is big enough unless anybody says anything. Okay, so one of the first things I wanna call out is I will be using Azure CLI for this demo. The reason for that is because we don't have our Azure PowerShell commandlets out yet. They are a very high priority. We have our commandlet reviews scheduled, but they're just not there yet. And that's just because, as you'll see shortly, part of this functionality is built on top of the existing capability for AAD login for Linux, which is only an Azure CLI experience. but we are kind of building on top of that same command space, so it's more extensible, and you'll see why as we go. And so all I've done here is perform an AZ login, so I'm not going to run it again just to save myself the auth flow. But previously, you've been able to do an AZ SSH VM, supply a resource group, right? And then supply the name of the machine that you want to connect to. And this would be limited to Azure IaaS machines and Linux machines, and only to AAD auth originally. What we've done is expand this capability to allow for both local user login. So no longer have to use AAD auth. You can use your local user with a key or username and password. And you can also hit Windows machines now, as well as Arc machines. So here, if I just whoops, don't need to see yourselves over there. If I just specify my resource group here, we'll say Summit, because I've been prepping for the Summit next week. And the name, so I have a machine on my desktop. It's an Arc machine, and it is a Windows Server 22 machine. And so if I specify this along with a local user, and in this case, Danny, and I execute this command, it's then, oops, did I spell something wrong? Here, we'll just do this because I don't remember what I messed up. There we go. This is my Linux machine, not my Windows machine. Okay, so if I run this, it's going to basically say to Azure, hey, I'm trying to connect to this specific machine. And that's why we need our resource group and our VM name. And previously, this was only limited to AAD, as I mentioned, for Linux machines. But as you can see, I specified my local user. So now I'm getting prompted for a password. This could also be done with a key-based auth. But here I'm in this machine, I'd say as normal. And what you'll see is that there is, this is an Arc machine. You can see that the Azure Arc agent is on that machine. I'm not going to muck with it too much just for sake of time. But if you're looking here, we can also still use AAD auth and connect based on the user I'm signed in as. So I previously did that AZ login. It knows I'm Danny at Microsoft.com. And when I log into this machine, it's now logged me in as my alias at Microsoft.com. So this is all great, but what about Windows, right? And so if I just take the same command, and I'll throw the local user back on there, and I'm going to change this to be my Windows machine. So now I can use that exact same command, specify that it's my Windows machine just by the name, and then let me run this. Oh wait, I already have a resource with the same name in that same resource group, because this is now an Arc machine, right? And there's also still IaaS machines, right? And so if I had the same named resource in the same resource group, you're going to have to specify. And so there's two ways you can do this. You can either do this by specifying Arc here, which is just an alias really back to that same VM command, or you can do a resource type. And it's Microsoft.hybrid compute. And if I run this command, it will still do that same process. And I spelled something wrong, didn't I?
No, it looks like you're, wait. Oh, never mind. You're right.
Did I spell something wrong?
Is the machine name right? You
Here,
said
we'll-
Win
No, it's something about
S22.
your switch.
There's the S. Well, here, we'll just do this. Find my old command. Okay. Oh, I forgot my, here we go. Here we go. This is how you know it's live, folks. There we go. All right. Oh man, I still messed it up, didn't I? All right, here we go. So now you can see it's doing that same call. It's going back into Azure, communicating through the Arc agent and saying, hey, I want to create this connection to my machine. And now you can see I am, in fact, on that, that server, and you can see this is Windows PowerShell, just because I wanted to make it clear. Okay, and so what are the kind of the big value adds here, right? You can now access any of your machines without a public IP address. Azure Arc is a free service. Azure CLI is a free service. You no longer have to have any of your machines with a public IP address. It is completely reasonable to say, hey, I don't have a pub. I already have my own existing jump box, right? I have a public IP to get into my network, and then I use that to connect to all my other machines. You can now open up a jump box into your overall environments without even exposing that one. You just need to onboard it as an Arc-enabled server, and you can now leverage that as your jump box. The great thing about what we call Shark, but just kind of SSH for Arc-enabled servers in general, is you're not limited to just AZ SSH VM or AZ SSH Arc. We do support an AZ SSH config file, and so you can create a config file to use with any other OpenSSH-based SSH client. You can export the config file and import it into anywhere else you're using SSH. So if you have any questions, I'll be in the chat. I'll throw the post to our blog post as well. Feel free to tweet at me or just message me on Twitter if you have any questions. And I will be talking about this and more SSH things at the summit next week. And now to Steve, who's going to show PowerShell remoting on top of Shark. It looked like, Jason, you were going to say something, so I wanted to just afford you the time to talk.
I was just gonna check with you real quick, Danny. I'm not trying to be the host guy or anything, but I was just gonna check with you real quick. I see if I got the 3 takeaways from this right. You said that you can now SSH to Linux, Windows, Arc-enabled. You don't have to expose a public IP address, and you said free. Is that correct?
Free, and you can use your existing keys, existing username and password of any local users you have, and you can also light up AADB itself for Linux. Windows will be coming sometime in the future, but you can just easily transition your existing environments into this, and so you don't have to re-provision any new users. And yes, it is free.
It's that free part that gets me every single time. Okay, now let's go to Steve and talk about SSH over PowerShell remoting.
All right, so let me share my terminal. All right, so Danny just showed. Well, I'm not going to repeat it. Basically, you can do SSH connections into on-prem machines over Azure with opening a public IP, right? So there's some discussion on Twitter when this was announced about, what about PowerShell remoting? Like, because what Danny showed right now is purely just SSH. So one of the things that people may not understand is, like, when you have the ability to create an SSH connection, you can actually create an SSH tunnel, and then through that you can actually do basically any protocol. So let me, in my test folder, I have a little markdown. I'm gonna just explain what's happening. There's no like magic here. This is stuff that SSH supports. We just built on top of it. So I'll run the demo in a bit, but so this is the command line. You can kind of see a lot of stuff that Danny already used. The change here is these 2 dashes means any arguments that come after this will be provided to the SSH client. And then this -L basically means set up a tunnel. The first number is the local port to my client machine. So I'm running this on a MacBook Pro. So that means use listen on port 8080 on my MacBook. This localhost is a little bit misleading or confusing, but basically this is not localhost to my MacBook. This is localhost to the target. So I'm going to remote into a desktop machine that's on Microsoft campus, call it Steve Lee Desktop. And it's saying on that localhost, forward the traffic to port 22. So in this case, actually I have a little diagram I drew down here. All right, so the way to think about it is my client, which is in this case Azure CLI, which is actually going to use SSH-exe, is going to tell SSH-exe to listen on port 8080. It's going to create this tunnel. The traffic goes to SSHD on my desktop machine, and it's going to instruct that SSHD to send that traffic to localhost on port 2022 on port 22. So that also means that it doesn't have to be localhost. You could actually use the tunnel as a gateway to talk to some other machine behind your corporate firewall. The only other interesting thing is this -N just means, you know, I'm not creating a normal SSH connection. I'm literally just creating a tunnel. All right, so let's run this. And again, I've already authenticated with Azure, so I don't need to do that again. Oh, actually, I was going to do one more thing. I want to do the -V because they'll provide more verbose output. So you can actually, if you don't do the -V, after I type my password, it'll look like it's just hanging because it's just literally just waiting for traffic. So this will at least show some activity. All right, so now it's set up this basically port forwarding over this tunnel. So I'm going to go to a different terminal window because I can't use this one. This is just literally now sitting there waiting for traffic. So session. Okay, so as I explained, the way the tunnel works is that it's actually listening on my local MacBook. So I'm actually remoting to my local machine on port 8080, but then all this traffic is going to be sent through the tunnel to my desktop machine to the port 22, if that makes sense. All right, so this is creating a PowerShell remoting using SSH. I don't have WinRM on my MacBook, and WSMan doesn't work that well on MacBook. All right, so now it's created, so I can do something like I can get this session, so I can do like an invoke command. I can get the host name. I can get like well, I'm running Powershell Summit on the target side as well. That's right, complete. But it tells you now this is a Windows machine, Windows 10, and I can of course do enter PS session as well. I don't know what to run on here, but I'll just run PS version table again. You can see this is a Windows machine. So this is all again on my desktop machine, which doesn't have any open ports to the internet. I'm connected via Azure. I authenticated with Azure, but I'm also authenticating with a local, well, this is a domain account, but a non-AAD account. And basically, if I had a Windows client machine, I could also show like WSMan-based remoting. We can also do RDP. Might be an interesting demo. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I need to restart my tunnel because it's not on the right port. I think RDP is 3389. Right now, listen on. That's right. Well, I guess we'll see if this works. And I'm doing 3389 on both sides because Mac doesn't have an RDP server. Actually, okay, I'm not going to show it because I actually don't know what is showing on my desktop right now, and I don't want to show anything like I should not be showing. But I can guarantee that RDP does work or any other type of traffic. So that's kind of like the extent of my demo. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat window.
It's pretty cool, Steve. Thanks, and thanks for not showing your desktop.
Yeah, I sometimes forget. Like I actually don't know what I have open right now, and I hesitate to just pop it up on the internets.
The key thing here is SSH is an arbitrary port opening, right? You can send whatever traffic you want, whether that's RDP, whether that's PowerShell remoting, whatever you want, you can use SSH for. And just think of it as you are plugging two wires together from these two machines, right? There's really very minimal limitation.
Yeah, one thing I'll just add, because I see some security things come up in the chat. Like in the SSHD config, you can totally disable port forwarding, so you can't establish a tunnel. So if there's concerns about that, you can always do that. Plus, one thing that was brought up, I don't know if Dan had answered, like there are ways in, well, because of this feature in Azure via Shark, there are roles defined. So you have to allow certain people to be able to do this connection via Arc and Azure anyway. So there's a lot of security gates along the way.
Outstanding. And with that, we're going to turn to Sean for a docs update. Hello, Sean.
Howdy, folks. Drop a link here in the chat and share my screen. Some of this, I think, got covered in last month's call, but I just want to remind folks about the updates page. You can see what new docs we've added in the last month. I try to get this published by the 5th of each month. what we've done in the previous month. One of the newest articles I want to point out is this About Module Manifest. Finally, in one spot, we have complete comprehensive documentation of what's in a module manifest, instead of it being spread out all over different topics. So thanks to Mikey for his hard work on that. We announced the release of Crescendo last month, and we have a bunch of new documentation there, and moved PowerShell script analyzer documentation here to the new location. So what we're doing is we're trying to migrate all of the documentation that's in the script analyzer code repo. Anything that's end user documentation is being moved out of here. And we made an announcement last month about this change that's coming. So with the latest things, we've already moved the commandlet reference and the rules documentation over. There's a bunch of information that's here in the README, and then the best practices doc and the I guess the script rule documentation. Those have been migrated to the new location. We're leaving them here in the source code repo for 30 days, and then they'll be removed. So if you've been going to the source code repo to find documentation for script analyzer, just know that it's now officially on docs, and that's where you should be looking for it. And the last announcement I have about the PowerShell docs repo, if contributing to PowerShell docs is something you're interested in, we have documentation here, or contributors guide. Just note that in May, I'll be changing the default branch from staging to main to get us aligned with the common standard across Microsoft for our repos. So just know that that change is coming, and if you've forked and cloned, you'll need to update those branches. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Sean. That's awesome. And so I kind of started this conversation already, Sydney, but you want to talk to everybody about the conferences and stuff that's coming
for
up?
sure. Yeah, no, I love it. So yeah, as Jason mentioned, and Danny as well, we're really excited that a few of us will be able to attend PowerShell Summit next week in Bellevue. So we will be doing State of the Shell per usual. Danny has an awesome session about SSH. And Stephen will also be kind of taking the lead on a great session around PowerShell tooling that we'll also be participating in. So looking forward to hopefully seeing some of y'all in person next week. Also wanted to mention that if you're not in a place where you're kind of able to attend conferences in person yet, or aren't able to make it out to Summit, Jason and I also put together a virtual session for Build, which is free and will be available at the end of next month in May. So look forward to that. And then we will also be, just saw the question coming here, we also are very excited that we got the approval to attend PowerShell Conference Europe. So Jason and I will also plan to be there, I think Jeffrey as well, in June. And so we're looking forward to seeing y'all there. There we'll be doing State of the Shell, and then I think we have 4 other sessions to look forward to that we'll be busily preparing over the next couple months. So looking forward to connecting with y'all in person if you're able to attend conferences. And of course, if you're not, we'll still be here on the community call every month to connect with you, and also look forward to our build session.
Awesome. And besides what Sydney just mentioned as well, there are also some other conferences in that we'll be attending and showing up to. But one thing is that if you own a user group and you're looking to talk about a particular topic, maybe secret management or Crescendo or something like that, we're pretty busy, but feel free to reach out to us because we really like to be able to talk with you and be able to, and we realize not everybody can get out to conferences and so forth quite yet. So if you have a user group or a virtual user group and you would like some assistance with that or to have a conversation, reach out to one of the PMs, myself or Sydney or Danny or Steven, and we can work to see what we can do for that. So looking forward to seeing everybody and having those great conversations. That's, I think, the important and fun part.
And I see, definitely want to call out too that Sean and Mike Robbins will also be doing a doc session at Powershell Summit next week. So also definitely excited about that.
Yeah, so if you want to, go up to Sean and ask him how he checks your grammar and stuff like that, as I often do, you can do it in person next week with him and Mike Robbins, who will also be there. That's great. Now we're going to move to talking about working groups and what working groups have been up to. And Steve, you want to talk about some working group information?
Yes. No, it's the only update is that we've Matthias, also known as IIS Reset Me. I'm not sure if he's on the call today. Had offered to join the engine working group, and so that was approved. So we appreciate community members helping out, and I will, now that I remember, I'll update the docs in the Powershell repo to reflect all the changes that have happened. I'll do that later today. But yeah, I just appreciation that we got a new member, and things are happening.
A huge appreciation to everybody that's helping us on the working groups. That's extremely valuable work and it matters a lot. So thank you for your contributions. Thanks for doing that work. And Sydney, have you seen Damien? Is Damien hanging out? I haven't seen Damien.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay, well, because I didn't want to like lick your cookie and take your announcement from you. So Damien, you have some great news.
I do. So the news we wanted to share here is the GA of our predictors modules. So AZ Tours Predictor is finally GA. It took us a while to get it out, but we have a version that is stable. It helps when you're using AZ commandlet. It will help with the completion of that command, associating the right parameters, suggesting values based on your local history. So like resource group and location are things that are going to come naturally as you navigate through those commands. We're not installing it by default as part of AZ. It's something that we want to keep separate from AZ for the time being until there is there is a compelling ask on that. And yeah, that's so we're going to make the announcement early next week. So we have a blog post on Tuesday with more details, but we wanted to share the good news that it's out right now.
It's fantastic. Congratulations, Damien. That's awesome.
Oh, congratulations to the engineering team that has been working hard to make this available.
Yeah, huge congratulations to the entire team that's been working on it. Well, that's fantastic. That's pretty much the agenda that we had planned for you. That means we get to go now start going through questions. So make sure you go out to the issue, add your question there, or you can type your question into the chat message. And we've got about 20 minutes left, so more than happy to have these conversations with you. And Sydney, I noticed the first question that came up in the issue was, and is there a planned PowerShell Get v3 GA date?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question. I can give a little bit of information around this. So I guess the short answer is there is no planned date. This release is definitely quality driven, not date driven. And so there's definitely no secret date out there that we're not sharing with the community. That being said, I totally empathize with the desire to see this be complete as soon as possible. I feel the frustration with some of the with PowerShell Get v2, and am really, really excited about PowerShell Get v3 myself, and want to see that available as soon as possible. Definitely having continuous ongoing conversations around kind of how internally we can accelerate towards that GA date. But the short answer is there is no like officially planned GA date. Everything that we're doing is totally public in the repo right now. You can see the PRs that are actively being worked on. You can watch our project kind of burn down in the project features on GitHub. And we will definitely let you know as soon as we do have sort of a date and a plan to release. I can promise you I will be shouting it when that is available. So no planned date at this point in time. Really feel the pain and understand this project has been going on for some time now. It's definitely one of those things that is a lot more complex than it looks on the surface, but we're doing our best to really not rush out and get a quality product. If we are, with our vision for V3, we really want it to be a significant improvement from V2. And so I think worst case scenario here would be rushing something to GA and then running into a lot of the same issues we hit with previous versions.
Thanks, Sydney. And yeah, the complexity around package management. We don't want to rush something that doesn't work out the door. And so I appreciate everybody's enthusiasm around this. Mine too. Just totally excited about it, but totally excited about the quality of it as well. There's another question that came in that I'll take while I just noticed it go by on the chat screen. Is the completer predictor still slated to be made public this month? I don't have a date to announce to you right now, but I'll give you this answer. Yes. And I'll leave it at that. So let's see. What other questions do you have?
I'm seeing that Chris Bergmeister offered to do a brief demo. So ooh. Chris, if you want to hop on and do that, yeah. That would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
So the context is around a couple of fixes that were made in the VS Code extension, and it all started out with a conversation we had in Script Analyzer around like discussing what it should do. So the specific case we discussed was when you've got a credential object and PS Script Analyzer recommends you a certain type, at the moment secure string, people were saying, well, it should maybe be a PS credential. And then we dug a bit deeper and looked at the interface and we said, well, why not offer both options? And it actually turned out Script Analyzer from day one always supported multiple suggestions or code actions, but it kind of got swallowed along the way in a tech stack, and the extension wasn't showing all of them. So in a nutshell, we've enabled a couple of fixes in the extension to show you those. I can give a brief demo. I think I would need just the allow for share. It is quite simple. It's just the drop-down menu that people are familiar with. But the message I want to get out is if there's any action that PS Script Analyzer is suggesting, and if you feel like, well, there could be an alternative one that other people want to have so that people can choose whatever works best for them, then this is enabled now. So currently only in the preview extension, because some of the fixes were in the extension as well. If you've got custom rules, that would work today with the preview extension. But the idea is if you've got anything to think about, we can ship this in an upcoming version of Script Analyzer and make it return more suggestions. So I'm just going to show one example. This is one that will ship in the next version of Script Analyzer, not the current one. So currently you would only see the first line to suggest to set it to a secure string. We're going to add the option for PS credential. And that's really as simple as it is, where we can choose secure string or PS credential. And that's really as short as it is, but I just wanted to get the message out, because quite often there's lots of discussions because things are controversial, people have different opinions on Script Analyzer. This is one area where we can actually say we don't need to decide on one thing. We can offer multiple code corrections. So if there's anything where you think it doesn't fit me well, I would like something else, we could start adding that now. And that's it. Thank you.
That's awesome, Chris. The flexibility, yeah, that's great. That's amazing. So ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to enter your questions in if you'd like to. We'll give everybody a couple of minutes to think if they have a question that they'd like to get in. I'll reiterate what Michael Green had typed in. Please test PowerShell Get V3 pre-release and leave us some feedback. Yeah, that's that whole part to the quality control that we're trying to do. So help us out and test that. Cindy, I'm checking for some additional questions. Is there? Not really seeing anything.
I'm not seeing anything. I'll also say if someone wants to use the raise hand feature and has a question that they'd rather just speak to, can't quite type out, feel free to select that as well.
Awesome. I love it when everybody's so motivated to get to that next meeting. Well, I'll start the wrap up here. And if you think of anything, please feel free to type it in or raise your hand, that kind of thing. And the wrap up is quite have to run, but keep up the good work. Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, Chris, do you have something?
Yeah, I remember historically there was always a what if option that was touted by a lot of people. Have you guys kind of abandoned that now?
The what I'm aware of, no, there's still a what if option.
Absolutely not.
Let me ask this: why are you under the impression you think it's been abandoned? It's certainly still supported, and
it's just that most of the built-in commands don't have something like it. Like invoke rest method, I'd expect there to be a what if option that would throw back what I'm sending instead of actually doing it. Or I don't see this on many basic commands anymore.
I think,
I'm writing modules. I put it in all mine, but
no. I think it's still certainly recommended. I think that if there are gaps in the command list that we develop and ship, feel free to open up issues on those. But for a lot of them, for historical reasons, we have not actively been adding. But Jim, I don't know if you put your hand down, but I don't know if there's something you wanted to add or say.
Yeah, there was. I mean, if I was going to reiterate what Steve said, if you find that you think that a commandlet should implement what if, please open an issue. It's mostly those commandlets that change system state. So getters don't normally have what if, but so in the case of invoke web request, it's kind of a gray area there. But if you have ideas about things that should be supporting what if, please let us know.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because it's as you said it's kind of like, well, no, we have no desire to get rid of what if, and I think Jim reiterated is that when a commandlet makes changes to the system state, it's very important to have what if and confirm. So we're big believers in that, and yeah, as Jim stated, if you notice that we have gaps, let us know. We don't intend to get rid of dash what if. I'd never be able to get anything to work if I didn't have dash what if.
Yeah, exactly. It's very useful for troubleshooting too. Which is why I brought it up for invoke web request or invoke rest method, is because I don't know how it's going to process all my headers and body and all that stuff. But if I put a what if at it, I'd love for it to show me the raw JSON and the raw rest method, REST API call it's going to make instead of making it.
Yeah, I think for the web commandlets, again, going back to what Jim was saying before, I think the general philosophy has been, if we had not known or thought about ahead of time that it might have high impact, then we would not have explicitly had a what if support. But I think based on what you're telling me, I think it makes sense for the web commandlets to have this as a debugging tool. Although it could also be a dash debug, I don't know. Why don't you open an issue and you can have that conversation about how to best support your scenario.
Thank you.
Q. Any other questions? Anybody else? I noticed somebody has good call. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, we look forward to seeing all of you that are going to attend the conference next week. It'll be a lot of fun. Very excited about that. Thank you to everyone that has joined us on this PowerShell community call for the month of April. Of course, we'll be back next month with more information to discuss. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always reach out to us on our GitHub sites, GitHub PowerShell, and you can file issues, have discussions, all of that. So feel free to contact us. We look forward to seeing you next month. We look forward to seeing you at a conference or at a user group in the future. Thanks so much, everyone, and look forward to seeing this recording up on our YouTube channel in about a week. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.